Cheers, everyone. So, I'm going to make a reaction video, and I have to give the disclaimer first that I don't know if there is a statute of limitations or a time frame in which a reaction video becomes null and void. But this video was made 3 weeks ago, and I just saw it 2 days ago. And it rang so true with me that I told myself, the moment I have the ability to make a video, I'm going to post my reaction. I never do this, and I don't even know if it's a reaction as more of just a continuation of his thoughts. So before I get into my reaction, let me show you the clip of the video that I'm reacting to. And this comes from a gentleman by the name of Steve Silva. Relatively new to the YouTube community. I think he's only got about 200 subs. I just found him in my, suggested watches, and he was making the comment in the video that I first saw that he was really surprised by how many views he got on the video that I'm going to react to. It's only got 200, just over 200 subs, and he had like 1.1 thousand views on this video. I'm like, that's impressive. I like those numbers. But anyways, that made me, what is he talking about? So I watched his previous video, and this is the clip that I want to talk about.
It's a time of more innocence. The vintage car is not a time of money or I don't want to use the word greed, but manufacturers making cards now, relic cards and autograph cards and insert cards, and whatever happened to the days when you bought a pack of cards and you tried to complete your set, trading your extras with your friends, and just enjoyed the cards for themselves. We didn't have price guides when I was a kid; they didn't exist. But we love the cards just as much.
So, and it was about, I don't know, 10, 12-minute video. Actually, it might even been longer than that. But those 30 seconds or so was what really got me thinking. And it's funny because I'm gonna link him to this video, and I haven't even talked to him. He doesn't know me from Adam. So he's probably thought this was a bit of an innocuous, nonchalant statement, but man, it just hit me when he said the reason he enjoys or appreciates vintage is because of the innocence. And I thought about that, and you go, you know what? He is exactly right, because in the reflection of vintage, and for most of us, vintage is obviously, vintage goes back to the late 1800s. There's nobody that is making content today that can remember those days. I don't think. But 70s, 80s, some 60s, even the 50s for some folks would be a decade that they experienced collecting. Most of us, for vintage, it's before we were collecting, before we were even alive. For me, it would be the late 70s and 80s that I did collect. That would be a kind of a playing days feel. And it's nostalgia driven, those, right? But I loved his point that it's not just nostalgia, there's an innocence to it. There's an innocence that I didn't really realize I was attracted to until I heard him say that. And that's why a light bulb went off, and I'm thinking to myself, you know what? There is so much validity to that. There was such a sense of innocence, and it's more of a looking back in comparison to today that creates that feeling of innocence. I'm sure living in the 50s and 60s and even earlier than that, define innocence as you're living through it, right? I mean, we could, fast forward 40 years from now, and my kids can look back and say, man, the early 2020s, man, those were innocent days. You know what I mean? It's like you don't necessarily experience in real time, but in reflection. And I look at vintage through the eyes of what it was like to be living in the 60s, the 50s, the 40s, the 30s, all the way back to the late 1800s. And inherently, even though there's stuff going on, there's world wars, there's depressions, there's a lot of stuff there was just, in comparison to today, just a sense of innocence because there wasn't so many strings attached. The beauty of collecting was just innocent. I'm struggling for words, but there's the word again, right? And I think Steve brought up a great point in saying that. He's talking about there was no price guides, or we traded cards. Early 80s, late 70s, I'm on a baseball team. I'm going to practice. I'm bringing two things, my glove and baseball cards that I wanted to trade, because I knew before and after practice, before mom would pick me up and after she dropped me off, I tried to get there a little early. We'd trade cards, right? That's not just nostalgia, that's innocence. And that's my reaction to it. It's like, I felt like it's almost visceral in the sense that that's something that I haven't really tapped into. And I look at, as many of you do, at your cards. You kind of go beyond the cardboard and look, what would it have been like to get these cards, from a store, or, be down and trading them or collecting them, putting the rubber bands around your 52 mantle. Those are things that just inherently just are innocent. And there's nothing wrong with modern cards. And I know Steve said that as well. Because right before that clip, he had talked about a rare pickup of a Boston Celtics refractor. And so he usually doesn't collect those, but he wanted to because, it's his team. And, I think at the time he recorded it, they hadn't won the championship. So he was kind of, looking forward to that possibility. I collect modern too. Usually my modern is going to be of, legend players in a modern type of card, because I respect and like the refractors and some of the parallels, or it's going to be players of my youth, a Ken Griffey Jr., or it's going to be, a Rod Carew, or it's going to be a little more modern, even an Ichiro, someone who, was on a team that I support, the Mariners. And there's nothing wrong with that. But with the modern collecting sphere, there is a definite palpable lack of innocence, because there is so many things attached to it. There's, whether it's the breaker influencer culture, if it's just, an inordinate amount of parallels and the pressures that come with social media, that come with, anything that wasn't present back then that created this aura of innocence we have now. It's almost a palate cleanser for me to look at these old cards, these old pieces of cardboard with dudes' faces on them, that I can live vicariously through them and wish for a more innocent time. Not to get too deep or, verbose, in the sense that as a parent, I have, 2 kids now that are over 20, and I just, you inherently think, I want life to be good for them. I want to leave my legacy is my kids, and I want them to have a good life. But it's just, the world today is a weird place, and there's so many pressures on them, pressures on kids today that we didn't have as kids. And I look at, sometimes I just need to just take a respite, almost a refuge, into my room and look at these cards and imagine what it was like. It's kind of like, it's not a fantasy world per se, but it's just kind of an appreciation of, again, Steve said it, innocence. And I really appreciated him saying that. So thank you, Steve. That's something that, again, I'm not saying you didn't think about it before you made that video, but obviously it was on your heart and you said it, and it really resonated with me. Obviously it resonated with a lot of other people, because, you had a lot of people watch that video. So what are your guys' thoughts? I mean, it's so easy for us to be prone to say nostalgia is the first reason why we collect all our cards, or we love the history of the game. These are all inherently true. They can all be at the same time. But what about innocence? There's so much innocence that can be attached to just a bygone era, and the living vicariously through the cardboard to a more simpler time where there weren't pressures and strings attached and complexity and so many options. It was just, I like this player. I have 2 of them. I don't have that guy. Can you give me that one? I'm going to put a rubber band around it, put it in my back pocket, and the street lights just came on, so I need to get home before I get spanked. I mean, besides that last part, it sounds pretty nice and innocent, but that's, what a lot of us experienced. That was our lives, growing up in, a bygone era. So thank you again, Steve. And, let me know in the comments down below. Do you think of innocence when you think of your cards? Do you think of innocence when you collect, when it comes to vintage? Does the lack of innocence in modern ever bother you? Have you ever thought about it? Or does it not even exist for you? Do you find that there is innocence in modern cards? Again, going forward, obviously today's modern cards will be tomorrow's vintage cards, hopefully for the next generation. So this is kind of like a generational kind of, next step, wash, rinse, repeat kind of thing, which is fine. That's the beauty of collecting, and to each their own. But let me know in the comments down below. Did any of this resonate with you? Definitely go check out his video if you haven't. I'll put a link for it down below. Check out his channel, subscribe. He's got a lot of good thoughts. I like his presentation, and he's just an easygoing dude. And I really liked his video. So leave comments down below, and I will talk to you guys next time. All right, bye.